Hello and welcome to the ThePreGameNetwork News Hole, a series where we recap a few things we heard throughout the week. Not necessarily everything and all the big news you'd expect, but a few things we heard and thought were interesting. This episode is for the week of April 5th, 2026. Let's get started. At the end of the week, it was announced that World of Warcraft private server provider TurtleWoW lost their 8-month legal battle with Blizzard Entertainment. The two sides reached an agreement that resulted in a permanent injunction against operating company AFK Craft, the strongest legal action ever taken by Blizzard against private MMO servers and made against one of the largest available. The ruling ordered a broad and immediate halt to all development, operation, and promotion by the team and anyone working with them, and also explicitly bars the transfer of assets, code, or social accounts to any potential successors. While there was no official word from the team at the time of the announcements, all means to financially support the project were quickly shut down. Although the exact future for TurtleWoW is up in the air given the lack of immediate official word from AFK Craft or anyone else involved. On the player side was a mix of outrage, mourning, and lamenting, with many saying TurtleWoW was their last form of engagement with the game, brand, and even any Blizzard property. Although at the same time there were also many fans of the official release that were quick to attack those affected by the lawsuit, be it player or proprietor. For the moment, TurtleWoW servers remain active, with a stay of effect for further legal action in place until June 8, 2026. Regardless of what happens, these events act as a strong disruption in the space and a major deterrent to private and independent projects in the same vein. Although in the long run it may have the opposite effect, as history suggests efforts like this can never truly be stopped as long as there is an interest, and some are emboldened by heavy-handed action such as this. An interview from Guilty Gear head and COO of ArcSys Daisuke Ishiwatari gained attention this week following the release of the company's new game, Damon and Baby. The topics covered during this interview included some of the design decisions behind the game, but most importantly included concerns around overspecialization in game development. In a direct quote, Ishiwatari stated, "It's very dangerous to spend decades doing highly specialized work, only to realize later that you're no longer capable of doing anything else. You'll find yourself at a loss when the project you're working on hits a rough patch, and even if you quit your job, your chances of finding another one will be slim." An understandable worry given that the company's reputation and existence is owed to a nearly 3-decade-long run of their most well-received products being fighting games, something Ishiwatari has spent the last 2 years coyly lamenting across different appearances and interviews. Ironically, despite his continued signaling that he wants the company to do more and be known for more, most outlets reported on this recent interview headlining Ishiwatari's efforts with Guilty Gear and opted to use images from Guilty Gear, including the most controversial character, Bridget, whose return to the series in 2022 and arguments surrounding his identity since have alone eclipsed many of the efforts from the company, including other characters and major updates added to the latest entry, Guilty Gear Strive. The outlook for ArcSys outside fighting games is light, even this interview only surfacing a month after it happened due to traction gained by the Guilty Gear franchise's controversies. As for now, Guilty Gear Strive has already lost 2/3 of its returning player base following the most recent patch titled 2.0, which brought wide-sweeping changes to gameplay alongside a returning fighter jam, but was quickly mired in network issues and division in the community as to whether or not the changes were good for the game. Meanwhile, Damon and Baby's early prospects could be best described as niche, with PC sales barely breaking past 2,000 units, similar to another recent release, Dear Me I Was, a smaller artistic-focused project with internal expectations of 75,000 units, which has reportedly sold less than 1,000 units on PC storefronts. While obviously there are console sales to consider for both games, and while these sales would be okay for indie titles from an indie studio, they are not so for the mid-size ArcSys, which is trying to grow with a diversified outlook such games bring, and repeatedly reminds its audience and anyone who will listen that their next failure could bring disaster to their endeavors. Time will tell if their push into publishing, smaller planned projects or other experiments, will finally catch on, but given their track record and trajectory, it's likely the company will need to continue leaning on lightning-in-a-bottle moments for their releases and profitable contract work if they want to remain financially viable, with no end in sight for their reliance on fighting games, much to leadership dismay. And now, some smaller stories from throughout the week. Pokemon Champions, the latest free-to-play venture from the Pokemon Company, launched on Monday, April 6th. And despite slow-built hype after its announcement during last year's Pokemon Day, fans were immediately met with problems that are unfortunately not a surprise for the brand. Critics and players quickly turned on the game, calling out the bare-bones launch content, the game only offering 186 Pokemon, less than 20% of all available Pokemon, almost all of them final evolved forms, with many popular fan favorites, competitive staples, legendaries, and several Mega Evolutions shown in the trailers completely missing. Content available to players was also lacking. Storage is severely limited to just 30 free slots, battle formats are restricted to 3v3, key-held items are absent, and features such as single-player modes, local wireless battles, and meaningful trainer customization are also missing. These proved to only be half of the game's problems, as players also slammed technical shortcomings with low frame rate, frequent glitches, buggy Mega Evolutions, and poor animations. The backlash prompted a quick apology from the Pokemon Company, confirming they are aware of the technical issues and promising patches along the way, but gave no word on content, which is likely to remain as scheduled to align with the game's free-to-play and competitive focuses. These issues, both of content and technology, have been a notable growing trend for the series through mainline entries and spin-offs, but due to the profitability of the series, all companies involved with the brand have been slow to course correct, something fans are hoping to see a change in. For now, Pokemon Champions is available on Nintendo Switch and Switch 2 consoles, with a mobile platform launch planned for later this year. On Friday, April 10th, Amazon announced major cuts to its cloud gaming service Luna, in a move many are calling a winding down for one of the last major cloud ventures in the industry. As of this announcement, the option for a la carte game purchases have been removed, and access to all third-party game stores, such as those from GOG, EA, and Ubisoft, as well as any associated subscriptions, are no longer available through the service. Any previous third-party purchases will remain streamable on the service until June 10th, after which they will be removed from customer libraries. With Amazon Luna slowly pulling out of this sector of the industry, remaining services are all tied to existing major players like Xbox, PlayStation, and GeForce, while the remaining smaller market shares falls to a pool of minor upstarts that come and go, a noticeable contradiction when compared to analyst projected growth leading into the 2030s. Potential customers for cloud gaming still have their options, but this turn of events is unlikely to grow the audience for cloud services in gaming, as options shrink and innovations stall. On Saturday, April 11th, variety entertainer Maximilian Christensen put out a bounty of $10,000 to anyone willing to engineer rollback netcode for the popular legacy fighting game, Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. The reaction to this declaration was met with excitement, as many were ready to return to the hype of Marvel vs. Capcom as if it had not been available to them in some form for the last 15 years. While others were quick to react with skepticism due to the amount of work reworking the netcode of the game would actually require if there was intention for it to function well beyond just having netcode slapped onto it. Along the way, arguments over Christensen's intent and character also arose, with some calling him God's gift to the community, and others calling this nothing more than a publicity stunt from someone who thinks you can throw money at anything to fix problems and win praise. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is a solid game from the last peak in the genre. Anything less than a new official updated version, or an entire new game, is unlikely to achieve any major new traction for the franchise. And if this new fan-made netcode manages to be made, it will likely end up in the same pile of other demands made by the fighting game community that, when finally met, receive a brief boom in attention before being forgotten shortly afterwards. Similar to the various Capcom fighting collections, which include one for Marvel vs. Capcom, the addition of rollback netcode to Guilty Gear Xrd, and, most relevantly, the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite and Beyond mod, a $30,000 modification project for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite funded by Christensen that, after months of development and internal conflicts, amounted to little more than an uneven shader facelift to existing assets. It remains to be seen if anyone will take on the task of completely retrofitting Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3's netcode, paid or otherwise. But until that happens, or until the time comes that a new game in the series is released, all games in the franchise remain readily available for those interested. And that does it for another week of the Pregame Network News Hole. If you encounter anything you think we'd find interesting throughout the following weeks, send it our way. Thank you for listening. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.